be a sponge, and then bring the juice.
By focusing on your improvement, by focusing on your progress, and eliminating any fixed mindset that you may have and acts of perfectionism, then you encourage your own mastery.
On some level, we do what we want to do 24 hours a day. Now, sometimes it may not seem like that, but if I'm choosing to work instead of sleep, what I'm actually saying is keeping my job is more important than sleeping.
I'm tired of this. I'm tired of getting beat. What can I do to get over this hump? So mentally, that's when I kind of put that forefront, like, hey, it's either all or nothing.
I like to put failure in quotations because I don't believe that failure is true failure if you're looking at it with the right mindset.
The truth is, the journey to greatness is hard. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes focus, and every day you have to decide what you value, what you want to pursue, and what you want to achieve. And if you dig deep enough, if you push hard enough, we all have what it takes to be great. Welcome to the Edge of Greatness.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, speaker, leader, coach, and now author, Coach Stephen Mackey. Mackey, thanks for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Man, Charles, thanks so much, buddy. Glad to be here.
So I saw a little smile when I said author. Does that excite you?
Hey, man, it does, man. As we're recording this, we are literally on launch day for The Locker Room, How Great Teams Heal Hurt, Overcome Adversity, and Build Unity, a book that I wrote with my now great friend, Damon West. But 10 months ago, when I reached out to Damon on a flyer on Twitter, we were at best acquaintances on Twitter, and I sent him a shot my shot in the dark. Man, you miss every shot you don't take, and I sent him a scroller, 2 or 3 scrolls to get through this whole message, and just laid it out there. Said, "Man, I've got an idea. I think that we could make happen." And turns out we were right. And so 7 minutes after I sent him that message, we were on the phone, talked for 40 minutes. The next day, July 4th, 2021, I drove from Blanco, Texas in the hill country down to Beaumont, Texas on the coast. And man, 4 hours later at a Starbucks, we wrote out the outline of what would become The Locker Room. And now 10 months and 7 days later, the book is in our hands and available bookshelves everywhere.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Such a great story and such a useful way to think of Twitter, because a lot of times you hear Twitter and you hear all the negative side of it. I like Twitter. I think there's some very good value to be brought to it, and especially when connections like that happen. So what I want to know is, how much did working with a co-author test the leadership stuff you preach about all the time?
That's a great question, because it's one thing to have these ideas and these thoughts and these values, and then it's another to put them into practice when you're not the only one making decisions, or when it's not in this sterile environment like a Twitter with set boundaries of things. And I'm so thankful that the things that we wrote about in the book came to try. I'll give you a perfect example. One of the things we talk about in the book is this idea that in a great team, in a healthy locker room, that the success of the team is over and above the success of the individual. And the way that we phrase it, we say that in a great team, your success is my success, and my success is your success. And working with Damon, it's been so humbling that we've lived that out. And I say that with, not to brag on us, but to say that we have lived that out every step of the way. And we understand that whatever Damon can do to invest in me, to give me a platform, to help my name, give me another opportunity, whatever he can do that he can leverage, well, for me to be more successful, well, that's good for him. And whatever I can do to leverage whatever I have to help Damon be, that's good for, it's a win-win. And when you get to that place, what it allows for is that me, myself, and I-ness to get checked at the door. And then that humility and grace to step in and say, look, I know who I am, so I don't have to prove who I am. Therefore, I'm freed up to go and to serve.
I love that. I love that. And it's called the locker room. My question is, why the locker room? With all the places that are involved in sports, you've got the field, you've got the arena, you've got the main stage, you've got practice fields, you've got all these weight rooms, you've got these different opportunities to do this. Why'd you choose the locker room?
Yeah, because it all starts there. That the locker room is the first place that everyone comes to. And when they come there now, they come from all different backgrounds, all different hurts and hangups and histories, cultures, races, all different beliefs. They all come from wherever they come from into the locker room first. And as I talk to coaches from Big 12 to SEC and across the US, this thing that I hear again and again was, if America had a locker room, well, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we had today. If we had a place where we could come together, because in a healthy locker room, right, you have a common goal, that there's this one goal that everybody has. And they recognize as they're working towards this one goal that the diversity of their team is their strength. The things that make you, and me, well, that's what makes us. And there's no sense of, wow, this is really an obstacle. Like, can you imagine a team going, hey, we only have offensive linemen? Like, yeah, we're going to be great. Like, you could have a phenomenal offensive lineman, but you could have a terrible team. Or if you only had quarterbacks, you have a team full of Tom Brady, but you're not going to be as successful as if you had a Tom Brady at quarterback, and then you had an Andrew Whitworth on the line, and you had this diversity of team. And that's our strength. And there's this sense in the locker room that diversity goes beyond just your talent and your ability in the position that you play, but all of the things that make you. That's what's going to make us. And that in a locker room, not only is diversity is strength and we have a common goal, but making a mistake doesn't make you a mistake. You think about the safest place for a student athlete to fail. The safest place in their world is in athletics. Where there's a caring coach. The number one, I work with athletes across the country, and the number one thing student athletes tell me is that their biggest fear is the fear of failure. And I would be willing to bet you see it with the athletes that you work with, that they're paralyzed to try a fear, to try and go beyond what they know they can be successful at. Because when they fail, what happens? Mom and dad, they lose it. When they fail, people say things. When they fail, the worst critic in the world is the one in between their ears. And so they're terrified of it. But you see, in a locker room, the great coach, what happens is that making a mistake, it doesn't make you a mistake. And that's a commitment that we make to one another. I mean, there's that picking up, there's that sense of, hey, I got you. Hey, next play up, next person up. And that's such a special thing in the locker room. You think about it, the standard is the standard. That's true of a great team. And it's not lowered regardless of your position, status, ability, that the standard is the standard. It's built up on the wall and everybody sees it, everybody agrees to it, and everybody chases after it. That in a healthy locker room, right, that hard days are endured, hard conversations are had, right? You think about it, coaches having the ability to sit and say, listen, you're a second string. I don't care what mom says. I don't care what your personal strength, you're not where you are. But I see where you can be, and I'm willing to invest in you to help you get there. Those hard conversations are had. Hard truths are received. Hard days are endured. And ultimately, in a healthy locker room, and service before self is what is expected of everyone. Success of the team is more important than the success of the individual. And so, to answer the question, it's a long-winded way to get there. Why the locker room? Because we saw the miracle of the locker room in athletics. And we said, man, if we could put together and we could communicate the power of a locker room to our country, to our communities, man, then we feel like we can make a difference. Because America, well, it's like we don't have a common goal. It's like we're divided on everything. And if these things could be put forth in a way, because sports transcends cultures and boundaries. And if we could put together a simple story that shows the power of a locker room, when individuals, you and me, sat down, if we had a common goal, if we realized that our diversity was a strength, that making a mistake didn't make us, if we had those things, like we could create our own locker room, even if we weren't athletes. And so that's why we chose the locker room.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's true. I think, the things that we learn in sport becomes who we are in life. And if we learn the right things early on, we learn how to be adults while children and play like pros, we start to build ourselves up to this higher level of expectation. It only helps the next generation to do more, to be better, to go further, and things of that nature. So you mentioned a line. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, real quick, because I thought about this the other day. You said then if we can teach our young people this, then as adults, like they'll be better off, right? And that's this common thing that gets said about athletics again and again and again. But I'm just sitting here wondering, like, if these lessons are good for our kids when they're future adults, then doesn't it mean that those lessons are good for us as adults right now?
Oh yeah, 100%.
But what happens is too often we are too prideful to learn the lessons. We only teach the lessons as adults, that we want to teach them, but we don't want to live them. And you see, that's why we want to put this into a book, because we're going, look, y'all knew it, y'all see the value of it, we get it, but we're not living it. We're teaching it, but we're not. There's a disconnect. Yeah. And when there is a disconnect, whenever we take our eyes off our core values, you know what happens? Adversity, conflict, and hurt follow. And I think with all the division that we see on so many different levels, it's real easy to see that we've taken our eyes off the goal, and we're teaching but not living.
No, I think that's perfect. I think that sums it up very well. You mentioned adversity a few times. You mentioned things of the difficult struggles. Can a team be great without adversity?
I think that indeed the adversity is a gift, right? The Stoics and Ryan Holiday, right, wrote the obstacle is the way. The scriptures teach that by persevering through trials, that we're made, that we made perfect. And so I don't think that adversity is something that needs to be avoided whatsoever. In fact, one of the commitments, right, of a healthy locker room is that the hard days are endured and the hard truths are received. But I think that we often view adversity as happening to us and not for us. We view adversity as this thing that needs to be avoided at all costs, because not all adversity is created equally. There is some adversity that I would love to avoid, right? It's good to learn from your mistakes. It's better to learn from other people's mistakes. And so if I can just watch and see the stupid things that you did, then I can avoid some of that self-inflicted adversity that comes from taking our eyes off our core values. But then there's other adversities, challenges, pushing yourself beyond your limits, the adversity that comes from fighting for standards, not just feelings, like Ben Newman says. And so I think that adversity is one that is not to be avoided. That's one that's to be embraced. I think the adversity that we talk about in the book, in that sometimes replaces in our minds with the good adversity, is the adversity from our dumb decision. Man, we're all, no matter how great we are, no matter how we could have been awesome for 21 years, but at 21 years in a day, we are still just one decision away from the dumbest decision of our lives. And that adversity, I think, is the adversity we want to avoid.
That makes sense. I like that.
And that's a character thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a big part of this is building character in our athletes. So how do you go about helping your athletes not let their talent outrun their character?
Yeah. And so this is really at the heart of all the work that I do, from our curriculum with 2 words, character development, which is my company. And we create and produce a video-based character and leadership curriculum for athletes and coaches through my speaking and now through the book. At the heart of it is we want to help athletes build an ethos to help them connect the dots between sports and life, because athletes understand, by and large, the importance of hard work and discipline and work ethic and setting a goal and working to, and they get how that helps them be successful on the field. My goal, what drives me every day, is I want to help them connect those dots between sports and life and go, if you take those same skill sets, that same discipline, that same work ethic, that same goal setting, if you take that same practice and now apply it in the classroom, now all of a sudden, right, instead of dominating the field, you're dominating chemistry. Or if you apply it in the hallway, instead of just dominating in the weight room, now you're dominating in and making an influence and an impact on your campus. If you apply it at the house, all of a sudden you can be successful anywhere you go, because the truth of the matter is sports will end one day, whether it's in middle school or high school or college or in the pros, right? NFL stands for not for long. Like, the day will come that your sports career ends. And if you only learn the short shelf life skill sets, those things that expire once you stop playing the game, then you've spent your life building talent on a kid's game. But if while you play the game, you learn the long shelf life skill sets, the things that take zero talent, but will make your talent better. And what happens is you get years upon years of reps at these things that will set you up to be a great student, a great person, a great business person, a great leader. And oh, by the way, they make you a better teammate. They help you win in the present, and they help you win in the future. Because when I ask students, hey, if you could build the perfect teammate, what would you say? They say things like, well, they'd be hardworking and dependable and respectable, and they'd be committed, and they'd be trustworthy. And they list all of these things. And the things they list almost always have nothing to do with talent. And they have everything to do with character. Because they really, if I can't trust you, I don't really care how talented you are. If you're going to be selfish, I don't really care how fast you are, because we would rather have someone that is slower but selfless, someone that is faster and selfish. There's just this intuitive thing in them. And so the sense that these zero talent skills, when you have them, they make you the teammate that you want, and they will make your abilities better. Because when you have integrity, there's no skipping reps in the weight room. When who you are is a hard worker, when I have a great work ethic, well, then I don't have to be motivated or yelled at or coerced to go and push myself or to handle business on the weekend. I don't have to have somebody watching over me to do right when I have integrity, because that's who I am. And so now the things that I do, they're made better because I get in there and I'm competitive. And like, I'm gonna look and be like, hey man, Charles got 3 plates on the bar. Like, I'm gonna put 3 plates in a 2.5. Just because, like, hey, I'm competitive, I'm gonna get to algebra, and like, hey, I'm gonna take better notes than you. I'll bet you 3 cosmic brownies I can take better notes than you. And it's not that I'm competing because my ego needs me to be better than you. I'm competing because I actually care about you, because I know that when I give my best, it'll make your best better, and when you give your best, it'll make my best better. And that is a character thing. And when we have that, well, it makes you a better teammate now, and it sets you up to be successful in the game of life.
When I think of talent, the older I get, the more I think about how my talent has changed and faded, right? I'm not the same athlete I used to be. So that's where those character traits become so valuable and they become so important. Tell me about a time when you had a conversation with an athlete where they didn't want to hear the character piece. They didn't want to listen to the part where, well, I'm so good, I don't need to be a good person. I don't need to do the right thing because my talent's going to carry me. How did you connect with that kid?
Well, I'll tell you about a kid that did not get it, and it cost him. And that kid was me. When coming out of high school, I had the opportunity to go and play at the United States Air Force Academy preparatory school, and didn't have the grades to get straight into the academy, so went to the prep school. No big deal. It's like a red shirt year. And so I did great at the military stuff, did great at the leadership stuff, did great at football. The one thing I did not do great at was on the academic side, that I had not developed by choice. I had not developed the skills, the study skills. I had not applied the discipline and the tenacity that I had on the field to my studies. And in high school, it didn't matter as much, because I had enough extracurriculars and enough leadership and all these other things that I was still able to get where I wanted to be. And so it was like, why spend more energy studying when I don't need it right now. I can spend my energy doing these other things. It's not like I was doing dumb things. I was doing great things, service projects and extracurriculars and things. But when I got to the academy, well, all of a sudden, because I hadn't gotten that those reps at studying, because I hadn't gotten that rep at learning how to learn, well, then I struggled mightily, man. I'd take a test and I'd just go pack my bags. Like, today's the day they kick me out, you know? And over the course of the year, I ended up graduating from the prep school. But the ultimate effect of it all was that I left the academy because I couldn't connect in my brain why it mattered, chemistry or English. Why did it matter? Like, why do I need this to go lead in the military? Why do I need this to go play football? What I didn't understand was that if I couldn't be trusted to study chemistry, then I couldn't be trusted to lead men and women in the military. If I couldn't be trusted to pass classes or to handle that stress load of school, I couldn't be trusted in something bigger. And ultimately, it led to the end of my college career. I played another year at U of H, but by that point, like the die had been cast. And so it led to the end of my athletics career. And it's not a regret, but it is one of those things I look back on and go, I did not get it. That it was never about that one moment or just that one moment, that the things that we go through, there are present consequences and present rewards, but there's also always a future consequence or a future reward. And I did not get that. And it cost me ultimately my collegiate career. But as I look back on it, I'm really thankful that I learned that, because I did learn it. And though it took some time, finished my bachelor's, got my master's, now I'm working on my doctorate. And there's been this real sense in me of doing graduate and postgraduate work because I do want to redeem my undergraduate experience where I didn't learn those lessons. I want to learn them. And like we said, I don't want to just teach these ideas, let's learn how to learn, or now matters, but I want to live it for myself. And so part of working on my doctorate and things have been redeeming that and going, I want to live what I'm saying, not just teach it.
That's an awesome story. And I'm glad it's turned into something special for you, because the impact you're making is vast and great. And I really appreciate all that you do. It's a lot of fun to watch the energy you bring when you get up on stage and talk in front of these young people, because they need that. They need that fire. They need that energy. They need that love. They need that compassion. And I think that's a huge piece. Speaking of the young people, I often hear coaches and leaders, they say, this generation just, then insert blanket complaint, what they can't do, why they're so different than the last generation, why they're so much worse, whatever. But as somebody who spends so much time with these youth athletes, can you tell me something that this generation does better than the last generation?
Man, I am so very high on this generation, on students today, that I'm not gonna say I'm gonna throw hands, but like I will get, like I will go to battle for these kids, because they deserve it. They're phenomenal. They're creative. They are connected in ways, in good and bad, but they're connected in ways that I can't even understand, really. There's this global presence about them, this global connectivity. But the thing that, as I talk to student athletes, that just makes me say, hey, they are worth the work. They're worth the work of investing and coaching and serving and enduring some sophomore kids doing sophomore kids things. Is that there is this great sense that the pressure that is on them is greater than we give credit for. That there's a great pressure on them, and most often it comes from themselves. That I asked you, I said, hey, what's one thing that adults get wrong about you? And one kid told me, he said, Coach, I put more pressure on myself than anyone else could ever put on me. That I have higher expectations for me than anyone else does. So I don't need more expectations or more pressure. I need more coaching and more encouragement. And that was telling to me, because I believe that kids want to be great. This generation wants to be successful. They want to reach the goals. They want to do it all. And they don't want to lose themselves in the process, but they don't know how to do those things. And I think that's nothing new to their generation. But I do think that it's the place that adults need to step into the gap the most, is to take their great passion and to take students' great commitment and great work ethic and high standards and high expectations and step in and encourage and equip and coach them, not to just be successful in the field, but to not lose themselves in the process, such that students' identity is not found in sports, but that it's through sports that they find their identity, not in sports. And so they have great standards for themselves, and they're capable of some incredible things.
I totally agree. I think too, a lot of times we forget just how much they have going on now compared to back when we were playing sports. We didn't have people hitting us up on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all these other apparatus, getting phone calls in the middle of the day while we're trying to study, all of these other distractions that make life challenging and more hard for them. We didn't have that. We could be single focused. We could be single minded. We could bury our head in the sand and just go about our day. These kids have all of that and they still show up. They still give that effort. They still put their best foot forward as much as they possibly can. And I think that's the piece that we often look past is, yeah, they might be challenging for us at times as coaches. They might have some things that you're like, man, I wish they didn't do that, but they've got a lot more on their plate than we ever did.
Absolutely. I mean, think about all the things they have to do. They've got to be a brand manager. They have to be a recruiting specialist. They have to be a student. They have to be involved in 37 different organizations just so they can get the small edge, because apparently it's harder to get into college than ever before. And, and then they've got to figure out how they're going to pay for college, and they've got to and that's just in situations where students don't have where they do have a stable home life. Now you throw in an unstable home life, and now they're working. Now they don't know what they're walking home to. Now they're, as a big brother, having to be a father figure. How many students go home and don't have a dad at home? How many have someone that pays the bills, but they're not emotionally in their lives? And so you start stacking up all the things that are going on, like all the normal things that kids go through, and then all the social media pressures, which can be good or bad. But the social media pressures and all the different, you're living a digital life and a physical life. It is phenomenally difficult. And they feel that pressure, but they also rise to the occasion. They also keep showing up, and they want to be great at it. They want to do well. And so I think that's where our responsibility as adults and as coaches comes in, to help fight for them, that they don't lose themselves in the process of chasing after their goals.
Let's shift gears on you a little bit here. Integrity, vision, and respect. What do those three words mean to you?
So as we think about integrity, right, it's that sense of it's the measure of who you are is what you do when it costs you more to do right than it would to do wrong. That are you the kind of person that would take the right action at the right time and not fear the consequence of doing so? Vision, do you have this sense, and do you see not just what is, but what is possible? Do you see the best in people, or do you see the worst in people? Do you see the best of what can happen when you bring the best of you to the best of what's in front of you? Or do you sit and you just see, my best cannot make an impact in the world around me? Respect, is there a sense of valuing the divine uniqueness that is in the person that's across from me, regardless of what they can do for me? Do I see the divine value in my own life, regardless of how my life stacks up to anyone else? That these ideas, I think, are things that every team, organization, business, that there is this sense of these organizations, their success is built upon this. Are you a trustworthy person that will do what is right? Do you believe in what is possible as a team? And do you value one another, not just for what we do for each other, but for who we are? Integrity, vision, and respect. When those ideas, and there could be countless other core values, but when we take those three, when those three ideas come off the walls, out of the email signature, and they come into the lives of the people on your team or organization, I'm convinced that you become unstoppable. I'm convinced that there is nothing that can, no matter what is between where you are and where you want to be, like, you find a way to get there. And so they're more than just words, right? They're a way of living.
I love that. I think that's powerful. I think that's something that a lot of people can get behind and use as fuel for their passions, their projects, their things that they're trying to pursue. I don't like the word passion. I don't know why I said it right there, because I think that we use it too often and it gets thrown around. When you hear the word passion from one of your kids, one of your athletes, what kind of conversation do you have with them about that?
Yeah, we talk about bringing the juice, right? Having the want to about you. This sense, Ben Newman calls it the burn, right? It's just this sense of there's something in you that wakes you up, no alarm clock needed. There's this sense, it's that thing that is in you that is longing to get out, that you are willing to storm the gates of hell with the Super Soaker 9000 for. And that's something that can't be coached, that's something that has to come from you. But it's something that I think the conversation goes to the most is to say that my passion doesn't need to be your passion. And in fact, it can't be. That you can't be driven by my want to. That as a coach, I can want the world for a kid. But my want to is going to find its limits. And there's going to come a point where my want to can't do it for you anymore. And now, like a little baby bird, you got to jump out of the nest, right? Mama bird has been bringing food to you, and now mama bird can't do that. Mama birds want to, can't do it for you anymore. And now you got to jump out of the nest, and you got to fly, and you got to go find your own worms. And there's got to be something in you. And it could be, hey, I want to be the first in my family I want to break the cycle. It could be this sense of, I just want to make an impact on my friends. It could be based on their faith. It could be any number of things. But there's this sense that whatever the drive is, it's got to be your drive. And the work will expose you if you're living on someone else's want to. Boy, that alarm clock goes off at 4:01, 4:02. Boy, you start hitting the snooze button. Yeah, you're living on somebody else's want to. Right now, it's going to cost you more to do right than it would to do wrong, and you choose to do wrong. But you're living with somebody else's want to. There comes a moment where now it's better for the team if I'm second string, but it's better for me if I'm first string, and I'm gonna be upset that I'm not getting mine. So I'm gonna take my toys and go home. You're living on somebody else's want to. See, and so the conversation is always, hey, you can start with my vision. You can start with my want to, but we've got to work towards yours. Why does this matter to you?
I like that. I like the evolution too of you can choose to start somewhere with somebody else's, but eventually you have to own what you're chasing, when you own that passion, and then all the little pieces that go with it. Because, having a passion is great. That's cool. You're motivated. But when it gets hard, is it really your passion, or is there something else that's driving you? Because I think that's a valuable piece that often gets overlooked.
And here's a great picture of why this matters. How many student athletes have we seen who in high school are awesome, disciplined, locked in, they're doing great, but then they graduate high school and they go to college and they're completely lost. and all their discipline goes away, and they become a completely different person. Or they graduate high school and they don't go anywhere. They don't do anything. They just kind of sit around and just get older, working a dead-end job. And you go, okay, well, what happened? Well, in high school, they were living off of coaches' want to, but there was no development of ethos. There was no development of their own want to. And so once coaches' want to was removed from their lives, they were exposed. They had nothing. All they had learned was how to play a kid's game. That's why developing character and leadership within our athletes is so important, because what we are giving them is a foundation to stand on once the training wheels of having a coach are removed. We're giving them a structure and a scaffolding that they can build life on when the scaffolding of an administration and a teaching staff and a school, when that structure is removed, like we gotta set them up to be successful. And that's why going beyond the game is so important.
So as a parent, myself as a parent, and the people listening at home, I have several that are parents. Something that resonated with me in that conversation that you were just having is, how do we balance knowing what we need our kids to do to be successful and letting them discover that on their own? Because again, if they don't have the want to, if it's our want to that they're following to be successful, then eventually when we're not there, that's going to fade. That's going to go away. So how do we balance that between knowing that we have to get you to go here, but we also know that you need to do it on your own to get there?
Yeah. Oh man, isn't it funny? Think about like when we were kids. I'm willing to bet that you could think of some memories of some things that you did as a kid that I know that I did as a kid that my kids have no chance in hell of ever doing. Like I was like in first or second grade riding my bike a mile to school. Just, hey, it's 7:05. All right, time to get on my bike and I'm gonna get on the road with the neighbors. And there's this little gaggle of kids, no adults. Right, half a mile down, when we cross a big road, there's a crossing guard. Just make it there. You know, lots of turns you can make. You know what I mean? And I'm just thinking, like, I would never in 1,000 years let my kids do that. Or like, and the list could just go like down the road of stuff that we did. The times that I was left at home alone. You know, like my kid would burn the house down. There's no way. But we were given this space as kids to figure things out. We were given space to be bored. We were given space to go explore. We were given space to make mistakes. We were given space to go and do. And then on the back end, and I'm willing to bet my parents probably had more of an eye on me than I thought. But what we've started doing now that we're parents, we've shrunk the space that we give our kids, and maybe I'm just speaking to me, I don't know, but I've shrunk the space we've given our kids, and what I filled it with is all of my right thoughts and all of my experiences and all of I'm an expert and all of my research and all of my somebody on Instagram said, and all of this, and I filled this space in, and it's like I'm providing all the answers. We're providing answers for our kids rather than giving them space to learn the answers. And so to say all of that, it's really hard. But if you're a parent of an athlete, you have one job. And your one job in all of this is to be the biggest cheerleader of your kid. Not of your kid's performance, but of your kid. And you gotta know that's hard. Because especially if you played, especially if you had, it's hard. But the only three things that a kid needs to hear from mom or dad after a game is, I love you, I'm proud of you, and I love to watch you play. There's nothing else a kid needs. It's not your job to coach. Your kid has a coach. Well, no, my kid's coach is an idiot. Well, too bad. It's not your job. Unless you go get hired by the school, unless you get hired to replace them, not your job. I love you. I'm proud of you. I love to watch you play. And then and your words have to match your body language in the stands and in the car ride home. There has to be a congruency there. And you say, but Matt, I want to go deeper in the conversation. Okay, perfect. Hey, Charles, tell me, what's something you were really proud of in the way you played today, or in the way that you prepared this week? Hey, what's something that surprised you about this game? Surprised you about the opponent? Surprised you about your teammates? Surprised you about yourself? Hey, what's one thing you want to do different next week? Now, this is a tricky one. Okay, this isn't your chance for you to answer, for you to insert all the things, your scouting report or what. No, this is the opportunity for the student. And if they go, hey, Dad, what did you see? And then there can be an invitation. But even still, it's not about judgment and judging the performance, good or bad. It's more about building the trust and the engagement of going, I am for you, not you as an athlete. You, my love, my support, my pride is not contingent upon performance, but it's rooted and grounded in the fact that you're my son, you're my daughter. And we all, as parents, we say the right things, but it's very, very difficult to live that out. And we have to make sure that we're in the right role as a parent, as we're having these conversations. I think about the 4 roles of a parent, right? Caregiver, cop, coach, and consultant. And too often, like, we need to be the consultant, or we want to be, maybe we want to be the coach, right? But in that moment, we actually just need to be a caregiver. We need to care for their heart. We want to be, we need to be the caregiver in a moment, or we need to be a consultant and say, hey, listen, here's what I see. Now you got to make the choice to do it. And then instead we end up being the cop and like, if you don't do this, then. And so it's hard, but I'm telling you, the things that student athletes want the most, they don't need more pressure. They don't need higher expectations. They need more encouragement. They need more support because they're in the thick of it. They want to do great, but it's just really, really hard.
No, I totally agree. And I love to watch you play. I love you. It was a lot of fun to see you out there working hard, effort-based focus, those types of things I think matter. I've had conversations with some of my parents about that. Is don't tell them about the performance. Tell them just how much fun you just had watching them run up and down the field and compete and just being out there and doing their best. And I think that makes a huge impact. As we begin to wind down here, I got 2 more questions for you that I'm really curious about. One is, what's the best part about what you do?
And the best part, hands down, it's the student athletes. It's being able to encourage them and to help them. The number of times that student athletes have said, man, I've been listening to you every week for 5 years. I've been listening to you every week since I started playing sports. And you've helped me overcome. You've helped me change the way that I think. Helping student athletes develop this ethos. And for them to have this vision, a grander vision for that which they can become, and to get to help equip them to get there is a really big deal.
I love that. And so normally people would probably ask, what's the worst part? But I don't think we think differently than that. So what's the hardest part of what you do?
Sure. The most stressful part is the stress that it puts on my family. My wife, we have 4 kids. We're sitting here recording 2022. I had the idea for 2 words, January 12th, 2017. Since that time, I've spoken over 1,600 times, driven over 300,000 miles across the state of Texas and the USA, encouraging students and athletes. And that stress is just a lot on the family, being on the road, being gone. And I'm thankful for it. And our family's thankful for the grind, but it doesn't mean it's not stressful, And so we do things to try to relieve some of that stress. Man, I'll wake up and I'll leave at 3:30 to get home, in time to be, to go and get there and speak early just so I can get home in time, for dinner and bed. And so we make those choices, but it's stressful, but it's worth it. Right?
No, I think that's important. And I appreciate you answering that, because one of the things that I'm trying to do is something similar, and I want to make an impact like you have. I think that's what this life's all about, is how much impact can we make and how much can we help people see their future in a better light. And that grind piece and that difficult stuff is the reality of it. And I think we often just see the shiny versions of everybody and the shiny versions of what's out there, and we don't realize the work.
Yeah. There is so much more, especially when you talk about being a speaker. People are like, oh man, if I could just make this and a speech, I could give 10 speeches a year, and that's all. I don't have to work 10 days, or, whatever. And nothing. It's kind of like saying, oh well, if NFL athletes, they get paid, $700,000 for a game, okay, right. It's not the one game you're getting paid for. It's the other 364 days of work that no one ever sees, that makes that one day possible, and it's the same way with being a speaker. The travel and the grind and the unseen work is very real. But all that said, there's a real sense that the reward is worth it, but you can't ever devalue the cost of the reward. You can't ever downplay the cost of what it takes to get that. You got to be able to count both. Don't just count the reward. You got to be able to count the cost as well. And that's why we talk about going back to the want to. If your want to isn't right, if it's somebody else's want to, then when the cost is greater than the reward, you're going to go, that's bad math, right? But when it's your want to, you go, no, this is an investment, and right now it's costing me more, but the day will come when I get a return on investment, and that's what's going to allow me to push through.
Oh, that's awesome. What an incredible message. And I want to thank you again, Coach Mackey, for your time today. What I want to do now is give you an opportunity to share where my listeners can get your book, follow what you're doing, connect with you a little bit, and appreciate some of the other things that you're doing out there in this community.
You bet, man. Thank you so much for that. So best way to find me on Instagram or Twitter is at Mackey Speaks, Mackey, at Mackey Speaks on Instagram and Twitter, or at MackeySpeaks.com. And that's where you can go to find out all about speaking and our curriculum and all the things that we do at MackeySpeaks.com. And then the book, The Locker Room, How Great Teams Heal Hurt, Overcome Adversity, and Build Unity, written with Damon West, is available now wherever books are sold: Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Amazon, and at thelockerroombook.com. And so go to any of those places and you can get The Locker Room. And we would be so thankful. Get one for you and get one for a friend. Y'all read it together, build your own locker room, and let's go make a difference.
Coach, thank you so much. I'll make sure all that ends up in the show notes. Again, congratulations on the book release today. That's exciting times, and I look forward to getting my hands on it myself. So appreciate you.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you, brother.
As always, guys, keep reaching for the stars. Fall flat on your face, but remember, whenever we fall, always get up.
Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. If you haven't yet, please take a minute now to subscribe and review our show. Join us again next week as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But remember, no matter what happens, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast.